Yo, what's up? If anyone was in Discord last night, you might have seen me freaking out about data science. No, I was working on a new pre-draft model because I broke my old one where I've been changing everything so much in the database, and I was like, okay, time to create a new one of those. Um, and so we were working on that, and I posted screenshots and graphs and random panic comments in Discord in the early AM. So, up front, I want to tell you what I think about my models. I don't like them at all. No. And that's weird, but you got to remember where I come from. I'm a complete amateur. I'm learning, and I want some idea to help me understand the profiles of players. I don't think I'm gonna create a magic number. I just don't. I'm waiting for Matt Spencer or Tanho over at DLF to figure it out. I don't know. But in the meantime, got to make decisions. I've got to make some early assessment order for how productive players were in their situation. We're not going to have combine stats this year. We're not going to have the underwear Olympics. It's production's all we have until the draft, really, unless you really want to dig into pro days. But either way, I'm updating my R squared formula tab for the database, and in so doing, I'm also slowly creating samples to test and create improved, hopefully, models. So yeah, you got to remember the way I prospect is to create some decent idea of how productive they were in their individual situation, and then I look through their profile. How well did they do over the course of their career? So my model, especially my pre-draft model, is meant to describe, more than anything, how productive they were in their situation compared to past players that have gone to the NFL. And that's it. I've also got a production score that attempts to do that as well, but everyone likes R squared and predictive models and stuff. So I make them to give me at least something to sort by. And right now I've only worked on my wide receiver model, but here it is. Anyone who's been in Discord or on Patreon already knows my rough tiers for how I'm reading the profiles, and I work through them one by one pretty much. But now I have this production score to rank the tab by at least before I break them down. I'm already in disagreement with it. Josh Hermsmeyer's pretty infamous for pointing out this is like the ultimate human bias, I guess. I don't know what the term is. That, we think we're smarter than the models. But here's the thing. I know the guy that made these models. I don't trust him. So I feel okay disagreeing with I feel very okay disagreeing with my model so far. However, I have tried to build in things that I've known for a while and discussed with other people the last few years. Were missing. I was just looking at overall production. I don't do per game. I don't find it helpful. Matt Spencer, specifically, who I mentioned earlier, is looking at a way of optimizing statistics on a per game basis, and it's actually pretty interesting. But I'm not there yet, and I certainly haven't found the optimization. Matt's working on it. It'll be interesting work when it comes out. But for now, what I do is I'm adjusting and if you look at the tabs in my database, you can see that I've got the raw stats, which is I really think what hopefully is the value I'm providing to everyone. If you want to know their statistics, there they are. And some level of how useful they are and how useful they are for predicting what into the NFL. But I'm playing with it too, and that's why I have some adjusted best statistics in there. I adjust by age compared to past players who were good that went to the NFL. So if they were hits, I look at what they did on average at certain ages, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and then I adjust a player's stats by how well those past successful players were. I also adjust based on a team basis, so how far over or under they were the team's average for players getting volume playing at the same position, and also conference average getting volume at the same position over a 5-year period, so it kind of tries to stay era relevant in case teams, extremely good one year or over a series of years and then bad the next. You kind of want to adjust for the level of the team a little bit, so I use a 5-year average. Team adjustments, again, I've talked about them ad nauseum. I don't find conference adjustments or team adjustments to be to really help the signal into the NFL. But I wanted to include those somehow, those situations, more context, numbers into a model, and or at least my initial impression of their production. And so what I did is I just used yards per team pass attempt, which is the variable, especially for wide receivers, that tests better than everything else when trying to predict into the NFL or explain the variance into the NFL. And I used I did modeling's a bit of a process, and I use a whole bunch of combinations and series of statistics through yards per team pass attempt and breakout dominator over average is a thing that I also adjust by age of players that were successful in the NFL. And you test a whole bunch of combinations, you see which ones are relevant, you go back to square one, you test them all against each other as well to check there isn't what they call multicollinearity. I don't know what they call it, I can't say the word, I can write it for you if you want. But it means that you're not borrowing signal, they're not telling you the same thing and you're double counting is essentially it. And a bunch of other things that I barely understand. Excel now spits out graphs when you do this model testing, which is fascinating, but also sent me back to school a little bit to understand what a probability plot's meant to look like. So that was fun. It's been a fun week, especially since I have to, I'm ignoring my life too much and stuff like that. But anyway, you don't care. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I have a model essentially, and it's statistically relevant. I've done as much as I can do in due diligence at this point. I'm still learning. You don't care and you shouldn't. But if we look at the test group, I check the probability scores, which is a thing that you can do. You can check the p-values, and they're all 98% or 98% or above, and 95 is the cutoff for that statistic is relevant. The probability curve looks a little left shifted, actually, if you're really into this stuff. So it's not great, but it's me. So there you go. But I did as much due diligence as I could. Now, when I rank the entire database by it, again, as always, it looks fairly terrible, with lots of bad players turning up towards the top. But you've also got Demaryius Thomas and Calvin Johnson towards the top, who were two of the best players to play at two of the most dominant teams, so that makes sense. Tyler Boyd's profile, which is pretty perfect, turns up towards the top. There's a high degree of the right players turning up in a 20-year sample size, especially considering we're adjusting by team and era and conference and age compared to past prospects. There's a lot of good stuff going in there. And when I tested it against a reasonable sample from 2003 to 2018, using data that was used to create it, so it should do pretty well. And this is, I guess I'll post this on Patreon as well, but it came up with like an R squared of 23%, and you can see all the variance around this little orange trend line here. You can see it is related, and again, because of the probability, it matters. It is giving us actual signal. But, I could have pushed it a little further, and maybe one day I will. I stuck with the R squared of 23%, just because the more variables I was adding, the slower the addition to signal while remaining statistically probable. So in other words, I was making it look a lot more statistics for a marginal increase in explanation of variance. And at some point I have to worry that I'm just overfitting because I barely understand myself, which is where you get it. You're asking the model to tell you what actually happened exactly instead of actually creating something as predictive. Now, when I tested a class that was outside of the sample, the R squared jumped up over that 23%, but that's just a single class sample. It was actually like around about my post-draft model, which is based on my pre-draft model. That R squared is now like 37%, so it's as combining the production with draft capital. I'm now improving the overall signal when we know what that draft capital is, and that's the ultimate goal. I think at the end, that when we have all the information, we're doing the best job we can, and we're getting more signal than any one thing. Just looking at draft round or just looking at production, combining them, it does improve, and again remains statistically relevant. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and I probably shouldn't have talked about that because that was 9 minutes of your life you're not getting back. But every now and again, a real nerd comes along. And again, challenge me, so I want to put this up front. Like, I've done my best, but just so you know, I'm not coming close to suggesting this is my perfect data science. So, What does it say? The 2021 class breaks down, and again, I'm already disagreeing with it, into some very distinct tiers, especially if you look at the percentile scores of the pre-draft model, which I didn't put in the database, but I did add a conference hit rate just because we keep talking about it, and so I thought it'd be an interesting modifier. Like, we've got age-adjusted hit rates, which then get drafted again by draft capital, because we include that in it, but also, just a percentage of players that have hit from that conference in the last 20 years. I thought it'd be an interesting reference point just while looking at this, for example, to know that Rondell Moore and Rashad Bateman, no one's hit from their particular conference. Now, as keeps getting challenged, people keep talking about it on Twitter, which is awesome, but they keep pointing out like other people that have broken out from the Big Ten. And look, I'm not a college expert. That's why I'm doing this little table and why I looked at the history of conferences to get a better understanding. Frankly, the Big Ten apparently has been divided up in different ways over eras. So, A.J. Jenkins came out the Big Ten, but they've reclassified the Big Ten in his era to Big Ten leaders, I think it was. And now the Big Ten West, where Rondell Moore and Rashad Bateman have been playing, it looks to have been active since around between 2011 and 2015, and since then, we've only had a max of 5th round draft capital, and no one has yet had a top 24 season, as long as it's been categorized by that. So is there a bunch of, well, really? Yeah, if you know about the college system, you know when to ignore this. That's fine. I don't grind a lot of college. Where is Purdue? I have no idea. So I just needed a reference point. I'm assuming, since a bunch of us are just trying to do the best they can and are not geniuses who know everything like you all the time, they might also enjoy a reference point for something that they don't in-depthly know every single facet of or whatever. And that's what it is. So get off my back, okay? So yeah. I've also included that in the hit rate lookup when I finally get that back online and upload it to the database. Do I have an example of it? Yeah. I recreated it in order to do my rankings here, and so I've got that same conference hit rate just being imported in to kind of modify hit rates, especially before the draft, before we have draft capital, where, as you can see, most of these columns are requiring draft capital. I've asked it to assume 3rd round draft capital before they have draft capital to try and capture some signal, just take a middle-of-the-road average of a 3rd round draft pick. So we are getting some noise from it, but again, where most of them are being drafted adjusted by draft round, right now they're just kind of estimations. Now we do have hit rates for breakout ages and conference, and those are the two, fully developed pre-draft scores. But anyway, we'll talk about that another time. I just wanted you to know what the percentage next to my ranks again are referring to. So, this class breaks down into a pretty clear tier. You've got Rondell Moore, Elijah Wood, Rashad Bateman, both from the Big Ten West, despite using a conference-adjusted statistics and team-adjusted statistics for that matter. Because the model itself, I didn't even mention it. What have I put in there? I've put average... I've put receiving yards per team pass attempt, adjusted by successful prospects, so an age adjustment. Then I've put the conference adjustment in there, and I also put Dominator, which is an age adjustment as well, but looking at a different stat. I didn't, in the end, I had best receiving yards team pass attempt deducted by team. I ended up taking it out because while it was adding like a 0.03 signal, when I looked at the distribution plot, it was basically it was random. It was adding something, but like it was that probability value is testing below. I think it was at like 52% statistically relevant, and it's meant to be over 95. So I just gave up the signal. Someone else can have the best R-squared scores to paste. I don't care. And I actually took out team adjustments. I said earlier I had team adjustments in here. Turns out I don't. I still can't find a way of utilizing it, because even when I find a stat that tests well by itself in terms of predictiveness or explanation of the variance into the NFL, when I'm putting it in models, it's telling me it's actually just noise. and has low p-value. So I removed it just, again, to do due diligence. So we've got an age adjustment and conference adjustment through yards per team, pass attempt, and dominator. I'm using their average last and best years, but in different levels of their stats. So I'm using the average and last. The average of their age adjustment in yards per team, pass attempts, the last, or their final year, and the conference adjustment. So what they just did, Devontae Smith kind of stuff, but also what they did on average. So it's looking at what they most recently did, but then comparing that, I assume, to their average to see if there's a change, and also perhaps bolstering people who have a bad last year a little bit, but their average is pretty good. Thinking of Rager didn't come out great in this model, but that probably helped him out a little bit. And again, also looking at Dominator, the best they did, so the best ultimate year that they had, but then also what they did in the career average, and that just seemed to be where it was happiest. The one it likes the best is average yards per team pass attempt above age. That has the most signal as a metric in a standalone. And again, none of these things really tested as having multi-collineate, blah, 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 some fancy thing that means that would be bad, so that's what's in it. I'm updating our squared scores because I'm also testing. I model against average points per game over the first 3 years. You can't see it because the way I got my screen. So I test against this metric. This is what my models are trying to predict. But I'm also retesting all the R-squared scores slowly as I work through the different tabs. Right now I've just done wide receiver because I've got new NFL stats in there. So their first year of target share, their expected points in year one, their points per game in year one, and their expected points per game over the first 3 years. I'm still sticking to PPR points, but it's in there. And as you probably can't see very well, but if we zoom in a little bit and I go to the big screen, yeah, there we go. Right now for wide receiver at least, the adjusted hit rate average is counting itself, so it kind of doesn't really count, but you see the post-draft model wins out in total R-squared score predicting PPR points, followed very closely by draft round and draft position. My model comes in third, so yeah, Again, I could have pushed it to get it around draft capital, but I was just kind of happy where it was, and all the p-values were right, and I was very tired. And I don't believe it's infallible, even if it has the highest, most bestest R-square scored in the world. It's just a reference point for me. So, yeah, I just kind of let it sit there. Again, combining what they did in college with where they get drafted is going to get us the best signal for our little thing. So what does all that mean? Well, these are my ranks. I've been talking about them on Discord and on Patreon a little bit about how I see some very clear tiers, at least in early looks. Jamar Chase, I see he's a no floor prospect. I do want to talk to some players. I find his dominance in the offense a little low, but he's also playing in a conference where they typically have a lower dominator anyway. So I want to know more about him, but he crosses all the thresholds, he ticks all the boxes. He doesn't come up overly high in this model, actually. But right now, as you can see on the right here, this hit rate's also adjusted by this conference, and he's coming from the right place, and that pushes them back up above the players who are actually testing a little bit better in my pre-draft model. More Bateman are being pushed down a little bit to that 11% hit rate, apparently. Elijah Moore, outside of Rondell Moore, I think Elijah Moore is the only one scoring the 98th percentile in that pre-draft model. It ticks all the boxes. It was uber productive. I can see how Jamar Chase may be the best player, especially since Elijah Moore seems to be playing a higher volume, lower air yards. If I were to guess what his stats are telling me about where he plays on the field, because I don't have air yards role, whereas Jamar Chase is playing more of a typical wide receiver that we chase. I don't care where the talent is myself, but I just want to know who's seeming to be talented, and all of these guys seem to have done exceptionally well in their situations. We'll have to see what the draft brings. There's a next tier of players that test very well, that I like quite a lot, but I just need to know more about. I haven't dug into their profiles too much. If they're not in bold, I really haven't looked through their numbers precisely. I have looked through Taylor Wallace's pretty well. He's in my, what am I calling my tiers this year? crushes and getting to know you. Okay, he's in my getting to know you section where I know the numbers look good, but some of them are coming out later. Why are they coming out later? People are going to ding them for that in the draft. The team's not going to like them, stuff like that. Amon-Ra, who I've literally heard no one else talking about, and the name is way too cool to happen. Like, my life's not good enough that I get to watch Amon-Ra dominating the NFL, so I got some little suspicion on that. But I mean, he tests really well where he came from, so I just want to learn more. I want to know what Zach Reed, Ray GQ, Travis May, I want to know what everyone else thinks of his actual play, and then reassess what his statistical profile is telling me. It's a little from nothing. I haven't dug through it enough. Seth Williams, I've heard buzz from some people, but I don't know who and I don't know why. I just know he was pretty productive in the situation that he was sitting in, and he's coming from a pretty good conference. Tamura and Terry, almost the exact opposite. But he played at a later age, but was very good at that later age compared to players that have played at that age. So I'm pretty interested in him, but I haven't done a full evaluation of statistics. Then you've got, what am I calling it? If it's not getting to know you, it's, I know that guy tier. Okay, I definitely do know Devontae Smith. I'm very comfortable with his profile. We'll talk about him ad nauseum later. I think he looks good. It's fine. I think the hype is going to be insane, and so I don't. I know that guy, but we'll see what happens. Okay, my dog's having a fight. Cool. And then the only other guy I've got left on my list in terms of I'm willing to stick him in a tier is Damie Brown here. He's been mentioned to me by 3 different people. One on Discord, one's J Mike Check on stream, and the other Zach Reed in the DM just saying, hey, you should check that guy out. He hasn't popped out to me yet, and I do try and let it turn up naturally as I'm just profiling stats. But he was pretty productive in his situation, and he's not coming from a terrible draft or conference area, so I'm interested. I have interest, but again, his name's not in bold. I really haven't dug into him yet, but he's the only other player really kind of popping for me right now. There are some players with age 18 breakout ages that I don't immediately rush to the top, like Justin Ross, for example. And again, I'm not comfortable with the profile, and they haven't stuck out to me in that pre-draft model just yet. So if you go and look at the database right now, it is updated. It's got that conference average, whatever it is, added to it. I've got them in all the tabs in mind, but I haven't finished updating. Well, I'm having to get any other adjustments to my models done before I update the tab. And you can also see the new pre-draft score, such as it is, with Rondell Moore and Elijah Moore, the Moore brothers, I guess, leading the class. A name that I didn't just read off, but I definitely... Where have I got him? Khalil Shakir. I do, I've got him in this getting, I know that guy, like he keeps turning up, but I've never heard anything else about him, and I really haven't looked through it, but he keeps turning up at the top of some of these lists, along with Keelan Stokes. So those are the 2 guys that I think are going to break down a little bit more next. Alright, I just wanted to do a quick video, because I'm trying to get better at doing that kind of thing. For you all, especially since I'm just about to post information on that on Patreon, I thought a video to go along with it wouldn't be a bad idea. If you've got any questions, let me know. And again, it's just a reference point. I'm going to sort the tab by it, and you should always feel free to ignore my opinion. I mean, I'm going to argue with people about it constantly, but that's because that's fun. I don't honestly think I know any more than most people, and I disagree with it constantly, as you just saw. Like, I don't have Khalil Shakir in my top tier just because he's at the top. I think he's in the 94th percentile of this model when you dig back to 2000. He doesn't automatically get bumped into my favorite tier. I have questions in that I don't know enough about him. While sorting tabs and looking through stats for this year's class, he didn't stick out overly. Broke out 19 and 20, which is good. It's fine. But yeah, I'll have to learn more about him. Alright, I'm going to get out of here. Again, any questions, hit me up on Twitter, at Pahowdy, Patreon, which is free, or the Discord. If you're on Patreon, or you actually, are behind my little paywall there, we got a Discord, and I'm actually enjoying another place to to tweet out comments when I feel like Twitter's had enough of me. I can just move over to Discord. It's pretty fun. But yeah. Thanks, guys. I'm going to get out of here. Bye. I gotta come up with like an ending or something, but I don't got one. I gotta go. Bye. Thanks.